Join Gator great Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Good morning, and welcome to a Wednesday edition of the program, Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning, from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. It's Wednesday. It means we'll have JC in just a second. We're also going to have the second portion of the show. Kyle Crooks from the Gator Radio Network will take over the program. We'll have Scott Carter from FloridaGators.com joining us. I have to get the meetings just so everybody give them an update. Yes, I'm in training camp with the Orlando Guardians. We have meetings and practice and all that stuff nonstop. Check out the Orlando Guardians web pages and Twitter feeds and all that stuff. Go buy your tickets. Come watch the Guardians down in Camping World Stadium. Let's go to the Titan Tomorrow hotline. Good morning, JC. How are you?
Well, I've been okay. I mean, I'm also in your neck of the woods in Orlando, and I'm at the very busy international airport, and there's not one plane moving because the Federal Aviation Administration has declared a ground stop for the next 3 hours because of a massive computer failure on a beautiful, clear day. So I'm down here in Orlando with you, QB, but I'm at an airport that ain't moving, if you can believe that.
Well, flights have been a mess all over the country recently, so
they have.
Not surprised. If you missed it last night,
No.
Gators win on the road at LSU. Good road win. Todd Golden's first road win as a Gator head coach in the conference. Did you get to see any of it, JC?
Well, yeah, I did, and then I really loved the second half. I mean, they outscored LSU by 14 points, and Castleton really played his best game of the season without a doubt. This was a game where Golden was coaching against the fella he lost to in the NCAA tournament, who was at Murray State last year. So I'm sure they that was fun for him to win, and just getting an SEC win on the road like this and getting your record to 500 at 2-2 is a real boost. It's hard to win in the SEC on the road. And so Florida really had I was surprised, frankly. Now LSU's lost a couple games in a row, but to outscore them by 14 in the second half was good to see.
Yeah, it really was. Kentucky loses at home to a bad South Carolina team. Boy, they got some serious issues up with the Big Blue Nation. It's crazy.
Yes, they do. They got a ground stop down there in Lexington. I mean, they got to be pulling their hair out. That's unbelievable. Losing at home to South Carolina. I mean, it's one thing to lose badly to somebody, but to lose to a team that you got to beat by double digits is really shocking. So the SEC is very interesting, I think, this year. And I think maybe it's more balanced than I originally had thought. But I do think there's 3 or 4 teams at the very top, Tennessee, Alabama, and Arkansas, that are a cut above everybody else in the league.
Yeah, it's a really difficult league. I mean, Auburn wins on the road at Ole Miss. A lot of people thought Ole Miss would win at home, but give Auburn credit. They continue to win.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk. Gators pick up another offensive lineman in the portal from Baylor. There's been a lot of stuff. People have been texting me stuff all over Twitter about Jaden Rashada not enrolling in school, something with his transcript. I don't really know the story. Don't really care, quite honestly, folks. I've tried to tell you people, it's up to these kids. And people can sit here and say, our NIL collective ain't worth a damn. Our athletic director ain't worth a damn. Our program ain't worth a damn. What are you going to do about it? There's nothing. Quit losing sleep over, people. I don't know what else to tell you. The coaches are doing the coaches are doing everything they can to bring athletes in. We lost. So this tells you right here, it's up to a kid. South Carolina had an edge rusher who left South Carolina, had a tremendous relationship with Mike Peterson, who is the Gator linebacker coach. Well, he chose to go to Florida State. Do you not think with his relationship and everything they possibly did, the kid obviously didn't want to be a Gator. He preferred to go to Florida State. What do you do about that? You can't change people's minds. That's what I don't understand. So,
well, QB, some folks think you can change people's minds. It's called selling. And that's what you do in this business. You
well,
sell.
JC, how many times has an insurance guy or a car guy that you're friends with tried to sell you something and you ended up buying elsewhere? It happens.
Well, QB, this is not a commodity. This is a football program. We're not selling something that you have to own. We're selling something that you choose to support. And so that's their job also. I mean, I get what you're saying about the kids. They have to make up their mind, but you have to convince them. Nick Saban never walked into anybody's house in 2009 and just said, well, here I am. I'm at Alabama. You have to sign. He had to sell the program, and that's what he did. And then we saw what happened. And so, I get what you're saying about the kids. There's no doubt that they're young and they have a lot of things going through their heads. But the dudes running the program need to be good at it. Now, here's an example of somebody who's very good at it. Kirby Smart is 81-15. 81-15 after that win against TCU the other night. Kirby Smart will be 85-15 after the first 4 games of next season. That's called an 85% winning percentage. Do you see that they play, listen to this, they play Tennessee Martin, the Skyhawks, they play Birmingham, they play Ball State, and they play South Carolina in their first 4 games. That dude's going to run his record to 85-15. And so it does matter who you bring in to lead your program. That's
well,
all
no,
I'm
I
saying.
agree. I agree with that. And I think Kirby's the best coach in football. I've known Kirby. I think he's outstanding. But he took over a program that was winning 9 games every year. Think about that. He took over. Mark Richt was winning 8 and 9 games every year. So it wasn't like he took over a dumpster fire at all. But he is clearly the best coach in America. I'm not going to argue with that.
But they had to take an extra step. QB, Mark Richt didn't get them to where they are now, and he never did. And he tried, but he never did.
But it's the coach that takes you to the next step. But Kirby has that Steve Spurrier in him, former player taking over a program that he loves. I think there's so many parallels to that. Tim asked or says here on Facebook Live, and I wasn't aware of this. He says a couple months ago you had Ben Chase on as a guest. He's now been named as our NIL Director of Strategy. Could you please get him back on the show and ask what's the damn strategy? Look, Tim, that's the first I've heard of that. JC, when we hired Katie Turner from Georgia, who was at Alabama, you may not be familiar with her, but did the Gator Nation, were they thinking that is the best hire in America? Yes or no?
I can't really remember any conversations about Katie Turner, QB.
Okay,
sorry.
Okay. She was the national recruiting lady in charge at Alabama. Kirby took her away from Alabama and had her at Georgia. Billy brought her to Florida. So they have a strategy, people. I just don't know what else to tell the listeners and the fans that you can sell, but kids are going to choose to do what they want to do. I don't know how it's no different than when golf courses sell to you, JC. You're going to choose to go play where you want to play. That's simple. And it drives me insane because everybody thinks that you're going to sign every player out of the portal, every player out of high school. It does not happen that way. Alabama, Georgia, they lose players too. Okay. So that's my 2 cents. So this is interesting. Joseph says, where there's smoke, there's usually fire. There's an NIL disconnect at UF right now, and it's obvious. Our collective isn't the golden standard we hype it up to be. At some point, QB, you got to look at yourself in the mirror and figure out what's going wrong. Everything ain't always peaches and cream. You can't keep ignoring there's a problem, or else one thing turns into something else, and then the whole house is okay. So again, Joseph, I agree with you. What the hell do you want me to do about it? There's nothing I can do about it. I'm not in there. I have nothing to do with NIL. I have nothing to do with the collective. I have nothing to do with the university. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Do I want us to win? Yes. But it is what it is. I don't know the answer to it. I do know this, that Billy Napier and his staff know what they're doing. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Because Jaden Rashada, and again, I don't care if Jaden Rashada decides to go elsewhere, if he decides to be a Gator. It's his choice. If we're not offering the amount of money or whatever's falling through, I don't know. There's nothing you as a fan, unless you want to write $1 million check and say, I want to buy this player, then do it. Joseph, I am not the voice of the Florida Gators. That would be Sean Kelly. People listen to me. Okay, so what do you want me to do? I'm asking, okay, so JC, what can I do having a podcast to help the NIL? Joseph thinks I can help it. What can I do? I'm asking.
Well, I didn't know we were in the business of raising money, QB.
What's that?
I said I didn't think we were in the business of fundraising here.
No, because again, I said it when NIL came about. I hated it. It's going to ruin college athletics, and it is a disaster. I had a conversation with 3 college, they're not coaches, but they're in like personnel departments from major Power 5 schools that were at our practice yesterday. They are trying to get other jobs in other leagues to get out of it, because it is exactly what happens. He says, we recruit guys. These are like basketball schools that play football. He's like, we recruit guys, we're on them, and then last second a school offers them more money and the kid goes. And coaches don't want to put up with that. I don't blame them one bit. All right, let's see. We got a couple texts here. Well, this is a long one. Big pickup from the Baylor guy last night. Way to go, Billy and Army. My concern is that we are not casting a wide enough net and maybe moving quickly enough with guys in them. They're moving as quickly as anybody else. Just because we're not signing them does not mean we're moving quickly. That's what drives me crazy. It says FSU and many others seem to be more aggressive and quickly and are stockpiling solid talent. That is true, but how are they moving faster? How are they? Again, it comes down to the decision of the player. The best example I can give is that I do not believe we had any wide receivers from the portal in to visit, and I think we have made very few offers out there. You and I both know there are some great reasons for that, but I still think we need at least one more veteran receiver to come to the wide receiver room. And back to my point yesterday, we really need Rick Pearsall back next year. If he does not come back, that's a big deal. I think we need him back too. Again, we're not in those meetings, but I can't tell you how excited when they hired Katie Turner and others, that people were in love with the way that we were recruiting and doing this. So there you go. JC, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm just listening.
Okay. Hey, Chris Storing Mortgage.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris Storing Mortgage. They do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Storing Mortgage today at 352-244-0840. Again, we got JC right now. Second portion of the show, we have Kyle Crooks and Scott Carter. We got a ton of text here. Hang on a second. This says, good morning, guys. Shane, I don't think Georgia is going away no time soon. They can get on a run. They're better than Alabama. They are the premier program, Daryl. They have surpassed Alabama right now, in my opinion. Chris from Mayaca says, don't fool us, Shane. We know you pull all the strings at the University of JC before you're going on your, if you ever get to your golf trip.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you think about it, it really just comes down to what are people and schools and programs willing to invest back into it.
Well, I don't know. Having said that, hang on a second before I lose my thought. Having said, I agree with that. But sometimes you may say, you know what? Is that player worth what school A is paid or offering him? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
If we're offering, let's just say $2 million to John Cornell, and you think you're going to come, and then last minute you get 2.5 or 3 million from this other school, well, maybe we don't think you're that good, and you can go. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, no. I mean, it's risk taking as part of every financial endeavor generally that's made at that scale. Okay, there is risk. There's always risk, and you give them your best shot, and you try your best, and you see whether or not it's successful. And I don't think we need to get into bidding wars for players. I mean, there's so many of them out there that it's just counterproductive. It gets to the point where now you're getting diminishing returns as opposed to getting a good roster with kids that want to go out there and play regardless of the circumstances of their financial lives. They want to play football to try to either get to the NFL or have a successful college career and get to a degree and be a productive part of society. That's it. I mean, and so, Florida will get their share of players, folks. You can't check off names and say, well, now we suck. Oh, now we're good. Now we suck. Now we're good. If you do it that way, you're just losing your mind, and it's not really productive because we don't know and we don't have the data that would prove that any of these kids we sign will be successful. So you take your best shot, you take your best guess, and you coach them up.
Yeah, and I know people that have a lot of money that are boosters at multiple SEC schools, and they refuse to buy players. They'll give money to the program to facility upgrades, scholarships, but they said they will not. And that's the same way. If I was in that situation, if I was a multimillionaire, billionaire, or whatever, had a huge corporation I was running and extremely successful, I would not be a part of the NIL at all. I did see where the women's basketball team did get an NIL deal from some company. So congratulations to those girls. They definitely deserve it for sure. Joseph and Cliff say, we do donate to the collective. That's why we are frustrated. Y'all act like they don't have regular people donating. The collective is not going to sign anybody, folks. The collective is outstanding for what they're doing with athletes, all athletes, not just football, all athletes on campus. Okay. When they go do radio interviews, when they go to this speaking engagement at an elementary school, or they do this, they get compensated. In the past, you couldn't do that. Those are the type of things they're doing. It's the Gator Guard that is involved in bringing athletes in. Like I said, I stay out of that stuff because you're never going to get me on board with this. I said it when it happened a year and a half ago, whenever. I would never be a fan of the NIL because it's not what it's intended to be. So that's that. What else you got, JC? We got a million texts here, by the way.
Well, that's all right. Go ahead with the text messages. It's just, look, I thought Georgia was unbelievable, very impressive. I think it's clear now that you're right. They're the king of college football at this current moment. And I do believe that they're not going anywhere, folks. I mean, if you saw their schedule for next year, you see their recruiting class, this thing is not anywhere near plateauing at all for Georgia.
Yeah, so I firmly believe Georgia's the premier program right now. However, there's one issue that could cause Georgia to kind of take a step back a little bit, but we will see. It's the quarterback. You can say what you want to say. That dude is a legit player, and he is the reason. Now, he had great players around him. We all know that. But you got to remember, they had great players around DeJuan Mathis, the 5-star that they benched to put Stetson in. They had 5-star JT Daniels. These guys couldn't get it done. Stetson did. Back-to-back national champs. It's been phenomenal what he's done. So I know Carson Beck and those other 2 5-stars that they have on the roster are supposed to, but we've seen how many 5-stars have we seen not perform well? So that is the key to see if Kirby can find efficient quarterback play to continue the run they're on. That's true, but dude, they've got Ball State, UT Martin, and Birmingham. I don't care who they're playing. I'm just saying.
Well, that matters.
Saying that the reason that they have taken that next step and surpassed Alabama is all because of Stetson Bennett, in my opinion. Listen to these stats. A Georgia high school quarterback had started the last 7 national championship games. Can you believe that?
Yeah. Well, I did not know that.
Deshaun Watson started. Deshaun Watson 15-16, Jake Fromm in 17, Trevor Lawrence in 18 and 19, Justin Fields in 20, and Stetson in 20, 21 and 22. That's pretty crazy. Listen to this.
Wait, they did what? But what was they started? But what was the stat about again?
A Georgia high school quarterback has started in the last 7 national championship games, and that game made it 8. That's pretty amazing.
Okay, I'm trying. Yeah, Jake Fromm. Jeez. Okay.
All right. Listen to this. The SEC has now won 4 titles in a row by 3 different teams, 6 of the last 8 championships, 13 of the last 17 championships. And also the SEC played this year the Big 12 champ, the Big 12 runner-up, the Big 10 runner-up, the ACC champion, went 4-0, outscoring them 204-48.
Wow.
So it's I think when they go to the 12-team playoff, you'll see 4 teams in the SEC Final Four for majority of the time, but you'll see.
Yeah.
It's just it's a different ball game, man. In the SEC, different ball game.
It is. It really is. I mean, I don't know why Sankey gets all the credit by being the commissioner, because he got a job that it was basically there for him once his predecessor left, but he's done okay. But I still think it's the coaches and the programs and the people involved in the football that have exceeded the rest of the country. And certainly the other night was it was a running clock. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, it went exactly how I thought. I knew they'd win by 20 or more points because I had coaches tell me that that had played both teams, watched a lot. They said TC has no chance.
Well, I will tell you this too. Ohio State, has got to be sitting there thinking to themselves, we were literally a Marvin Harrison Jr. injury away from winning the national title, because they would have beat TCU as well. And they had Georgia by the ropes, dude.
They were a timeout away. It didn't matter if they lost all their receivers.
Yeah, they were timeout away. Timeout.
Yeah. Scott says,
well, I mean, Georgia,
brought to you by Melvin Wall, the best NIL initiative the Gators could do would be to persuade an NFL owner to hire Kirby. Probably true. They ain't gonna happen.
Kirby loves. He's the king of Georgia, dude. There's no reason to go to the NFL. He's fine. He's gonna finish his career at Georgia, just like Saban will finish his career at Alabama.
All right, before we get out of here, this is Chris from Mayaca again on the Titan Mar text line. I said, did you see David Pollack at the end of the game say that Georgia's taken over college football and become the premier program while sitting right beside Saban? It's pretty funny stuff, but it's true. It is very true. These fans are in a fantasy world. We just got the facility, new dorms, and just increased the player experience. It will take a couple of years to build the talent. Billy is the guy. Give him 5 years and see what happens. I do think he's the right guy. It still goes back to me. It's just amazing to me when JC, I think you picked the Gators to go 7-5 back in August. I picked them to go 6-6. We didn't have anybody on any of the all SEC teams. All the media people were picking them to go 6-6 or 7-5, and then they go 6-6, and people think it's a failure. That's what blows my mind.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, listen, we got to put that behind us, folks. You got to start looking forward. And I know it's about looking at these players and rebuilding this roster, but trust me when I say it, and I think QB will agree, that roster he had last year was the least, or let's just say the worst, and I hate to use that word, but the worst roster he'll have as a coach of the Gators.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. All right, JC, before we get out of here and turn it over to Kyle Crooks and Scott Carter, I want you to hear This Day in Sports, brought to you by our good friends at Comfort Temp. Comfort is our business. Peace of mind is our promise. Beat the summer heat. Schedule your air conditioner's tune-up today, keeping you chill in the Florida heat far away. Comfort Temp Heating and Air. Give them a call today at 352-376-2366. This Day in Sports, in 2016, the College Football National Championship at the University of Phoenix Stadium, the number 2 Alabama Crimson Tide. You won this game, JC. You beat Clemson 45-40. So that's This Day in Sports, brought to you by our good friends at Comfort Temp. All right, JC, hopefully your plane will take off. I got bad news for you. I think you're going to be there all day. I don't see you moving anytime soon. You may still be sitting there when you come. You still may be sitting in the Orlando airport on Friday when you join the program.
Well, I'll be knocking on your door then. How's that?
All right. That's JC. Join us on the Titan MR hotline. We're going to take a timeout. Kyle Crooks from the Gator Radio Network will take over with Scott Carter from FloridaGators.com. You're watching and listening to Pod Oak Matthews in the Morning. from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peaceland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Comfort Temp, comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise.
Campus USA Credit Union.
QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, and watch. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, Chris Doring Mortgage, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Doreen Wibby, Realtor Caldwell Banker, MM Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Aver and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Cube Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Hi, Steve Spurrier here. You know, making a reservation at my restaurant is easier than a Saturday afternoon homecoming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, a number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
All right, welcome back to Pot Up Matthews in the Morning. I know you want Shane Matthews, but you got me, Kyle Crooks, wearing the Florida basketball hoodie today, joined by the great Scott Carter, senior writer of FloridaGators.com. Scott, it's good to see a lot going on in Gatorland right now. But first of all, how you doing?
Good, man. Happy New Year, Kyle. Been a while, but yeah, everything's good. It's turning the kind of in that transition phase, man. Doing some basketball and spring. Baseball's around the corner, and of course, football never stops. You know that.
Yeah, it never stops, and of course, we'll talk a little bit about Florida's situation at the moment with NIL, and of course, the story last night with Jaden Rashada. But your thoughts overall on the national championship game, and obviously Georgia now being the new top dog, I guess is the way we'll phrase it, of college football, winning a second consecutive national championship, first time since early in the last decade with Alabama, and how dominant it was. And boy, it stunk as a college football fan. And I'm sure for you, Scott, to have to sit there and watch a game that's 38-7 at the half. You just wish that maybe Alabama got in there after all, and it was Georgia and Alabama again for the national title game. But that stunk the other night, didn't it? That national championship game. And I'm sure for Florida fans watching Georgia win it again.
Yeah, the game itself, I always hope, Kyle, that, when you have the national championship game, the Super Bowl, I'm just always hoping for a good game, right? I mean, I didn't have any real particular rooting interest for either team. I just wanted to see a good game. So it gets 24-7. And my daughter is a big football fan. I told her, you can continue watching this if you want. I know it's going to be a blowout. So I'm going to do something else. Now I woke up the next morning, I didn't realize that TCU would not score again. So,
right.
When I saw the final score, that was even more of a blowout than I expected. But, I just think that speaks to where Georgia is right now. We know what Kirby Smart's done there. He was knocking at the door for a long time. And then the last 2 years they've cashed in. And, just for perspective, I mean, the part I was watching, Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit, they kept talking about this was a program that lost 5 starters off defense as first rounders to the NFL. And to be able to come back the next season and do what they did, well, you got to give them credit, man. It just shows how far they are ahead of the rest of the league right now, I think, including Alabama. But I love to see TCU in the game because, I'm like other fans out there. I mean, I want to see unique, interesting matchups. TCU had a great storyline, with first-year coach. quarterback who got benched, came back and won the job, and ended up being a Heisman finalist. So it was a good storyline leading up to the game, but not one that Florida fans obviously probably want to talk about a lot in the off season, because it just paints the picture of where the SEC is right now. But you know what? If you like challenges, and one thing I know, Kyle, is this is all cyclical, man. I mean, Florida was on top, and Georgia was down. Now Georgia's on top, and Florida's kind of down. The Gators will come back; it'll swing back. I don't know when it's going to happen, but that's just the way it works, So, but right now, Georgia, they've got some work to do.
Yeah, and it's all a talent game. Look how good Georgia is. You mentioned you lose 5 starters off the defense if you're Georgia, and you come back and you're a national championship, and it really is not close. Undefeated season all the way through to the national championship. I think what's interesting, Scott, is Stetson Bennett. He's a 25-year-old guy, doesn't have all the tangible things that you look at of, say, Anthony Richardson or Will Levis, some of these bigger NFL draft prospects. But man, something's got to be said to the fact that the dude wins, and he wins consistently. And you mentioned he didn't have the starting job. He's battling with some 5-star guys, becomes a starter, wins 2 straight national championships. I wonder what the next levels, the workouts are going to be a big deal for him. I wonder what the next level is going to think of Stetson Bennett and what he could possibly do at the NFL. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he's a kind of a case study in everything you just said. Not going to wow guys by the numbers, maybe in the 40 and the arm strength and all the things that scouts start drooling about, like Anthony Richardson has. But he's got those intangibles that you just can't teach. And, the more I've been around coaches in my life and understand how they think, one thing I've realized is, man, the value of adding players who know how to win, it sometimes supersedes just pure talent. And, you got to have those guys as leaders. You've got to have them in the locker room. And, Stetson Bennett epitomizes that. I mean, so I hope he has some success at the next level. I know that on paper, it doesn't appear maybe that he's kind of what the NFL wants right now. But I mean, if you look back, I mean, there's so many quarterbacks like Stetson Bennett over the years who have done big things in the NFL or on the college level who weren't the sexiest prospects, but they just had those intangibles. And he's going to be interesting to watch, Joe, just kind of like on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's going to be interesting to watch Anthony Richardson, because they're totally 2 different type prospects. One is a guy who, Stetson Bennett doesn't have the big arm, doesn't have 6'4", 240 pounds. And then Anthony has all those things. Yeah. But then you look at what they've accomplished on the field, and, Stetson Bennett wins there. So it's fascinating. I'm always intrigued, though, by the draft, and what makes it so interesting to me is just, you just never know, man. All it takes is one team, is the old saying. So we'll see.
Yeah. And I'm interested because I'm an Indianapolis Colts fan, and obviously it was a horrific year for us. And we're looking for a quarterback, 4th overall pick, probably not in the place to get Stroud or Young. They'll probably be gone by then. Do they go to Levis, or maybe draft Anthony Richardson that high just on basic potential? Yeah. It's interesting too, Scott. I got some of the viewership numbers from the national championship game, and you mentioned that you really weren't watching towards the end, which was most of America. It was about 20.3 million at 8 o'clock, so kickoff. Yeah. And then by 10:45, it'd been cut in half, 10.3 million, which is still, I think, a lot for a game of 65. Most of that's probably in Georgia in the Southeast, but still 10.3 million people watching at 10:45 at night. College football is the juggernaut. Okay, Scott, here we go. Obviously, the big conversation right now is the NIL Gator Collective. And to be frank, I don't know a whole lot about it. I'm just kind of the radio guy that shows up and calls the games. I know you do a lot of work behind the scenes talking to people and researching and writing great articles about these things. But Jaden Rashada, not enrolled in Florida yet. Obviously, that raises some red flags, especially some fans. And I get it. Fan is short for fanatic. When you see something like that, quarterback that's everything. You got DJ Lagway in the 24 class. You bring in Mertz from Wisconsin, but seeing some sort of hesitancy from Rashada, who already flipped for Miami, to come to Florida, maybe you think there's something there. Where there's smoke, there's fire. What are you hearing? Are you hearing anything about this situation?
Yeah, I mean, there's always something there, Kyle, when a guy's not on campus the first, not necessarily the first couple of days, but, by the end of the first week. I think that's where everybody's going to be watching now. Is he going to be on campus, in class, enrolled by Friday? There's going to be news if he's not. And, of course, with the football sites who follow every step, I mean, it's news already. But, I think what's caught some people off guard, I mean, Rashada, he was at the Under Armour game in Orlando last week. He talked to a couple of local UF beat reporters. I read their stories. He said he's ready to come up here and get this thing rolling. And of course, he hasn't come yet, so that's, I think there's probably, and this is just a guy who's taught, in my role now, Kyle, I don't necessarily deep dive into these stories because that's really not my job anymore, although I certainly follow them and stay in tune. And I mean, I'm aware of what's out there on Jaden Rashada. I mean, I know the storylines. And, when you look at him, he's a very intriguing prospect. He's had his whole recruitment process has been, kind of out there for everybody to follow because he was a commit here at Florida. And then he goes to Miami. And then he comes back to Florida. And it's all been very public on social media for the fans out there who follow, NIL lawyers, the hardcore football fanatics who follow every move. So there's no real secret, I don't think, what's going on. I mean, it seems like there's some kind of hang up in the NIL process. And even the kid last night, I mean, he kind of tweeted like, hey, it's in God's hands. What does that mean? I don't know. It seems like it might be in his hands. So we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen here. The whole era, there's so much out there that has changed the game in the last 18 months or so with the 1-year transfer portal. And then, of course, the NIL. And I'm just one of those people. I'm all for these kids getting these opportunities. I've always thought that was long overdue. But for the leaders, I mean, you're going to have to eventually define that true space and set some parameters so everyone at least understands what is and what isn't. Because I think right now there's a lot of people with unrealistic expectations. There's a lot of people on the outside trying to get on the inside because they think it's their ticket to riches. It's just kind of like a I don't know, a cesspool right now, in my opinion. And I'm hoping that eventually it's more defined so it's fair for, the kids, their parents, the coaches, everybody. I mean, but right now it is truly, nothing surprises me, Kyle. If there was a story that came out today about Jaden Rashada or some other school and it was put in your crazy facts or nuggets, it would not surprise me one bit.
Yeah. And welcome to the Wild Wild West, folks. You think your head is spinning as a fan. Imagine what Billy Napier's head is doing and Katie Turner in recruiting. I mean, this is a 365, 24/7 venture recruiting. And that's why there's people that are paid full-time jobs to cover recruiting, especially now because of NIL. It is crazy. Well, we've got to pay some bills here. Ruse Ogra State Farm Office is a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visit ograinsurance.com or call us at 352-240-1779. Year one for Billy Napier. A lot of people want to take a whole lot from year one, and there certainly were some mistakes. There certainly were some good moments, and the best moment you can argue was on night one against Utah, that Amari Burney pick that sealed the win against a team that eventually went on to go to the Rose Bowl. But you have a losing record, and obviously that leads a sour taste in every Florida fan's mouth, especially the way the season ended, Scott, in the Vegas Bowl, where granted, Florida did not have a large portion of the roster. They were facing an incredibly hungry Oregon State team that was one win away from 10 wins. They had everybody coming back. They had outstanding running back that was over 1,000 yards. And it just kind of played out the way I think everybody thought it would. But year one for Billy Napier, you start on the high and you have moments here and there. How do you take away year one? What's your assessment of Billy and his temperament around the facility and with the media and all that in year one?
I mean, I think Billy, from that perspective, I think he passed all the tests. I mean, Billy, one thing I've noticed about him just in my short time covering him and being around him, he's an even keel guy. He doesn't seem to be swayed too much by the emotion of the day. He's going to stick to his formula and what he believes it's going to take to build the kind of program he wants. And I also think he's kind of come in he's equipped with a plan that kind of takes into account this new age that we're in and the things we talked about earlier with the NIL and the transfer portal and just the constant roster flux that is going to be college football in the next ever so how long until there's more definition to the rules. And I've told people like this, some people will email me or call me, hey, why didn't they get this guy or that guy, on signing day last week? And I'm like, guys, there's going to be players who signed at other schools last month and they won't even be at that school by the time the season starts. They're going to transfer over to spring or summer. That's just where we are. And it's just a crazy time. But in terms of, season one for Billy, it was a transitional phase from the start. And I think the Utah win certainly, I don't know, maybe it raised expectations or created some perceptions that what was maybe possible that really were. And, they were going to go really, Kyle, with whatever Anthony Richardson did consistently. And when he was that very inconsistent quarterback early on, we saw that in the team. They were inconsistent. And I think it played out that way. So their win-loss record, it's about I thought if they won 8 games, that was going to be a really successful season. They fell short of that. So the ending was certainly disappointing. In the big picture, I didn't see, I don't take anything alarming out of it because whatever they did, this team is not the caliber Florida team that it's going to take for the Gators to be where fans want it to be. There's a lot of work to do. I tell people this all the time. I've said it a million times. You could probably make the strong case that roster was the weakest Florida roster since 1979. And that's not hyperbole. I really believe that. You've seen, a lot of the guys are transferring. It's not exactly like they're transferring to Alabama and Georgia and USC. They're going to schools that are even below Florida in terms of prestige and national standing right now. So that's just the reality, right? And that's what he inherited. He's got some work ahead of him. It's a big job, but I do believe that he's equipped for it. I hope he succeeds because I like everything about his demeanor and the way he kind of represents the program. But we all know eventually it comes down to your win-loss record. But fans got to give him some more time. 1 year is. You can't just be judging this thing 10, 12 months. It's just not fair. No one could, they could have hired Bill Belichick last year and he probably would have done any better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a microwavable society, right? Everything's got to be done right away. And I get it. That's the thing. It's like, I understand. Like that's
the world we live in, right?
I lived in that hardcore fan space. I understand, like, especially, Scott, when you look at it from this perspective, right? Georgia's won back-to-back national championships. Tennessee, your other rival, is a top 5 team. Florida State now looks like they're ascending to where they want to be under Norvell. They're probably going to be a preseason top 5 team. So you look at it from that perspective, it's like you're the kid on the outside of the player. You're the kid inside the school while everybody's on the playground, and you're kind of knocking on the window sad because everybody else is playing and having fun and you're not. Yeah. That's where Florida's at the moment, but you got to be patient with it.
Well, I think, you just mentioned a comparison for where Billy Napier is right now. I think Mike Norvell's that guy. You look at when he took over Florida State, they struggled the first couple of years.
Yeah.
Florida State fans, they want him gone. They didn't think he was the guy. But, eventually you have to stick with the guy. It appears right now from the outside looking in that he's finally got things going in the direction that they need to be going at Florida State. And that's what Billy Napier's trying to do it for it. But it took Mike Norvell 3 to 4 seasons for that to happen. So it's just, I mean, there's always going to be, that part of the reality is that, look at Sonny Dykes. He came in at TCU and did it in year 1. Why can't Billy Napier do it for it? Totally different situations, totally different programs, totally different conferences and challenges. It happens once in a while, but it's rare. And we saw the end result. TCU, if they were in the SEC, I don't think they'd been winning the SEC West or East. That's just the reality of it. So you've got to build your program with the parameters you're working in. That's the SEC East with Georgia and Tennessee and Kentucky. All 3 of those programs on paper are kind of in better shape right now, maybe than Florida is. But I think they had a really strong recruiting class. I thought the class that the Gators signed last month, I mean, from top to bottom, it's a strong class, one of the best they've had in a decade. So that's step 1 of the momentum. So it's just going to take time, but I know some fans don't want to hear that.
Yeah, and you look at the short sample size of what Billy has brought in. Osiris Torrance is going to have a brick outside of Ben Hill Griffin Stadium because he's a consensus All-American. ETN comes in. He had an outstanding first year as a freshman. Ricky Pearsall was, I thought, a solid addition on the outside. So far, his track record to bringing in specifically transfers has been pretty good. You mentioned the whole patience aspect of a coach in year 1. You have on the men's basketball side, I don't know if you watched it last night, Scott, but big win for Gator basketball at LSU. If you like offense, especially in that first half, you probably want to close your eyes. The Gators shot 29% for the first half. And we're only down 3 because LSU was just as bad. They were 3 of 17 from 3. Made some adjustments at the break. Kugel had a good game. Colin 18, 7, and 5. Those 5 were blocks. Very good win, Scott, last night for Todd Golden and company.
Yeah, it really was, Kyle. I thought that, I went last week to both games at home. I went to the Texas A&M game, and that was a tough one. And I'm thinking, man, I don't know where this team is headed. And then, of course, they showed up on Saturday in what I thought was a must-win game, beating Georgia and Mike White in his return. But then you're wondering, okay, was that just a one-game thing where they got up because of the storyline, or would they go out to LSU and follow that up? And I thought the way they finished last night was very reminiscent of the way they finished against Georgia on Saturday. They really closed strong, and they did it differently. I mean, this game, it was more Colin Castleton inside, a lot of what people thought we would see more from this team. I think he drew 10 fouls, went to the line and made 12 of 15. Mm-hmm. And they're going to have a mix of that. And then they got the veteran guards playing well last night, Kyle Lofton and Myron Jones. So I think the veterans are starting to assert themselves. Lofton was really good in that Georgia win. I mean, Castleton's been there all year, but it's kind of been up and down in terms of usage. So I think if they can figure out, his usage consistently where he's most productive and get the other guys in, and they're going to have to shoot better consistently. But I think, back-to-back wins, it's something to build on right now, Kyle, and they needed something to build on. So we'll see how they handle the success. But 9-7, 2-2 in the league. It's obvious the league is kind of going to be pretty open. There's a lot of up and down early on. I mean, Kentucky's not the powerhouse it normally is, and LSU's 1-3 now, I think. So we'll see. But it was a big win last night for Florida for sure.
Yeah, Kentucky lost to South Carolina last night. And they were down like 13-2 fairly quickly in that game. I want to remind everybody, Celebration Point is where Gators come to celebrate with premium brands like Nike, International Diamond Center, Dave & Buster's, Palmetto, Moon, Escapology, Pfizer's Rooftop, and HBC's restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, the #1 celebrity polished casual restaurant in America. We will see you at Celebration Point, where Gators come to celebrate. All right, Scott. So we got the NFL playoffs this weekend. I want to get your pick. So are you a Jags guy?
Not really. I'm more Bucks, man. I live.
Okay, so you're a Bucks guy.
Many years, yeah. So I'm more.
So you're invested in this weekend. Monday for you.
Monday. I grew up. I used to be one of those Cowboys fans. I lived and breathed by the Cowboys when I was a kid, man. I loved Tony Dorsett, Roger Staubach. And then, of course, the Emmitt Smith years, I got back into them. But Cowboys have done nothing for so long. I've kind of lost interest. So Tampa's kind of my team now. So now I get to see those two teams play it. By the time the NFL playoffs comes around, I'm strictly a storyline observer. I don't really care who wins, who loses. I like the storyline, and the storyline in that Bucks game is, okay, if Tom Brady, I'm ready to first losing season ever, but he still wins back-to-back division titles, which the Bucks had never done. That's just kind of where they are. So I'm hoping that he can keep it going and see if he can have one last piece of magic left in Tampa. Let's see. But yeah, and the Jags, I mean, they're a great story too. I mean, I saw some of that game the other night. I mean, that crowd over there was electric, and they got the big win. And it's fun to see these Florida teams. I mean, and the Dolphins, they're in the playoffs too, right?
Yeah, they are.
I mean, I haven't read much about all three, but I'm going to guess it has been a long time since all three teams have been in the playoffs.
I don't have the year, but I did read it. That's on me. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it'd be interesting if Tua plays for the Dolphins. You mentioned the Bucks, 8-9, win the division, NFC South, awful. But credit to them, Tom. You don't want to play Tom Brady in the playoffs. I'll say that.
No.
Is it this version of Tom Brady we've seen all year, where I think the stat is they've only had more than 23 points one time in the last 8 games? I mean,
it's been a different year for him.
Oh, very good.
They're at home. Cowboys are just so inconsistent. It won't surprise me if they pull that one off, but we'll see. The NFL playoffs, man, you just know that there's not going to be many 65-7 games like we saw the other night. They're usually going to be tight, late, something crazy, something tight. So it's a very competitive league. The parity is apparent, and that's what makes the playoffs kind of fun, because you really don't know most of the time which team's going to win.
And it just shows how much we don't know, and how much maybe NFL talent evaluators don't even know. Brock Purdy, 5-0 as a starter. They're gonna take on the Seahawks this weekend. Geno Smith, who I grew up in the New York, New Jersey area, so I remember how Jet fans would call in and just kill Geno, just kill him. And now I think he's a Pro Bowler this year. He's going to the playoffs, and it's just crazy how you're able to mature, and you're able to, for Geno's case, become a starter after Russell Wilson leaves, who becomes one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. And all of a sudden, Geno Smith is a Pro Bowler. Figure that out, Scott Carter.
Yeah, I think they maybe traded DNA out there or something. I don't know what happened, man. It is interesting to see what's happened with Russell Wilson. I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, let's get your picks. Okay, Seahawks, Niners. Who you got? Game obviously in San Francisco. I probably could give you spreads, but
I'd go with Niners at home. I think that's going to make a difference there. We'll see.
Yeah, I'd say Niners as well. Chargers, Jags. That's the big one in this area. 2 young quarterbacks, 4,000-yard passers. Lawrence, Herbert. Who do you got?
I'm going with Lawrence and the Jags. I think they're due for something good, man. So I think it's their time, and it's going to be a jacked up crowd over there. I mean, this is going to be like a college atmosphere, because those fans are so hungry for something good over there. So that'll be a fun one to see. I think the Jags home field again matters.
Yeah, I'm excited for Jags fans. I worked in Jacksonville at the time the Jacksonville Suns in AA minor league, now the Jumbo Shrimp. So I grew up I was working in that complex in 2015, and to see all those fans as fired up as they are now, pretty cool. Dolphins, Bills. I think this is pretty much, especially if Tua doesn't play in Buffalo. Buffalo seems like a team of destiny, Scott, with the DeMar Hamlin situation. They run back a 96-yard touchdown the first play after it.
Yeah,
pretty crazy.
Yeah, I'm not picking against Buffalo, man. I think it'd be what a great story that would be if the Bills actually did make the Super Bowl and won it. Could you imagine how much we're going to hear about DeMar Hamlin and their story if that were to happen? But I like the Bills in that one, man. I'd love to see. I'm glad Miami's back in the playoffs, but I don't think they're at Buffalo's level yet.
So we got about a minute or a few seconds left here. Giants, Vikings, Ravens, Bengals, Cowboys, Bucks. Giants, Vikings, Scott. I actually go with the Giants on the road. I think they'll win that one at Minnesota.
Yeah, I'd probably go with Giants too. Vikings are very inconsistent.
Yeah, Ravens, Bengals, AFC North battle. I'll go with Joe Burrow, especially Lamar Jackson probably will not play.
Yeah, we're on the same page, man. We're
Yeah.
I agree with the Bengals too.
I don't think we're going to be on the same page here, Cowboys, Bucks. I'm going to go with Dallas on the road. I think they eventually let their fans down later in the show here, but not this week.
Yeah, I'm never going to pick against Tom Brady.
You know what? As a Colts fan, I know that very well. He's broken my heart many times. Scott, you're the man. Appreciate you hopping on and chatting with us. A lot going on in Gator World. Where can everybody find your work?
Just FloridaGators.com or on Twitter. I'm always hanging out there at Gator Scott. So we're getting rolled on a lot of busy spring sports, so we'll be out there doing it, man.
Yeah, Scott does an awesome job. Has a lot of great stories on FloridaGators.com, so go check it out. Big thanks to Tammy producing the show today. Big thanks to Shane letting me hang. He'll be back tomorrow with a new episode. Again, big thanks to Scott. I'm Kyle Crooks saying so long for now. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.